Silver Birch Archery, Mathews Lift X. Let's go. What's going on today, guys? We're coming to you today from Silver Birch Archery in Milford, Pennsylvania to do our very first bow review. Now, bow reviews out there are a dime a dozen, right? There are 100 people out there doing bow reviews every single year. What we're going to be doing here specifically is we're going to be doing bow reviews for shorter draw length bows. Today specifically, we're going to be reviewing the Mathews Lift X at 27.5-inch draw length. And we're going to go through everything. Specifically, what I want to do is talk about the speeds that this bow could get at our draw length. For people like me who are shorter, we tend to want to get the most speed out of the bows that we possibly can. But there isn't all of the information out there for that. So hopefully we can help you make an educated decision as we go. So let's start off by talking about the Mathews Lift X. From the factory, I have my notes right here in front of me. From the factory, the Mathews, this is the Lift X, so it's got a 29.5-inch axle to axle. It has a 6-inch brace height, and it weighs 3.99 pounds. Let's call it 4 pounds even. Mathews did a really good job with this year. I'll be honest with you, I have not been a Mathews fan for quite some time. Not that I don't think their bows perform well, they just weren't really my jive, if you know what I mean. But I gotta say, I'm pleasantly surprised with this. I've been fortunate enough to shoot it a little bit over the last couple weeks, and they really did a great job. So some of the big tech stuff, and one of the big things that I haven't really been crazy about with Mathews for quite some time now is their grip. I grew up shooting Mathews. My first Mathews was like from 1995. And then my second one, both of them hand-me-downs from my dad. The second one was from the early 2000s. I believe it was a Mathews Outback. And back then they had the wooden grips that were really wide and contoured. But they've gone to this slimmer style grip. And let's be honest, over the years, you either love them or you hate them. And one of the things I love that Mathews did this year is they went with their Bond grip system. Now this Bond grip system is absolutely incredible. Let me get to this camera over here. This Bond grip system is awesome because it gives the archer an opportunity to change out the grip to the grip that they prefer. Now inside here they talk about, I'm not going to go ahead and read all this, but inside of here they talk about how they came up with the 3 different grips. You have the engage grip, which is the grip that comes on the bow, and they claim this one to fit most archers. The contour grip, as it sounds, is contoured, and it in my opinion, it resembles a little bit more of a Hoyt style grip, which I personally do prefer. And then lastly, they have a tapered grip, which I have an example of right here. And if you look, you can see that the grip tapers out as it goes down. I don't have any of the others right now. Those are all sold out. So the only ones I have are the engage grip that comes on the Mathews. But if you hold these side by side, you can see the difference. You can see this one here is tapered from top to bottom, and this one is just smooth all the way down throughout. Now, some of you may prefer the smooth grip. Some of you may prefer the contoured grip. Now, what's really great about this Bond system is these grips literally just pop out from the bottom of the grip. So if you wanted to change it out, all you have to do is pull from the bottom. This grip comes off. You take the grip you want, you put it back on, and you are ready to go to the range. I think this is great for Mathews. I think they're listening to their customers. They're addressing some of the issues that customers have had in the past. And this makes the bow more friendly to a larger range of shooters. Next up, we have the limb shift technology. If you guys are Mathews guys or gals, or you're into the Mathews bows, if you've been doing your research, then by now you've definitely heard about the limb shift technology. The way the limb shift technology works is basically one side of the limb, both top and bottom, or one side of the cam, stays fixed in one position, and on the other side there's an Allen key little button here that you turn, or a screw that you would turn. And what that does is it moves the limb closer or farther away from the cam, and they work individually. So what that does is it's essentially adding or removing lean in one direction or another without a bow press, without needing spacers. And it's very, very quick. A little turn goes a long way. So that limb shift technology is huge for this year, and most companies are moving in that direction, looking for a way to tune their bows without having to worry about needing a press. So that is awesome. Mathews did a great job with that. Next up, we have the ARC7 limb technology. To be honest with you, I don't know all that much about the limb technology other than the fact that it is new. And last year with the original lifts, I believe, I don't remember which lift it was, but there was a batch of limbs that they were having some trouble with. And I believe that this takes care of whatever that issue was. We haven't heard any issues with that this year so far. So that's fantastic. Some of the technology that's been on the Mathews for quite some time now, that they still have running on these now, is it comes with match bowstrings. Actually, that's new. They've switched over to match bowstrings, but they also offer multiple finishes. You can get this in a solid finish, you can get it in a camo dip finish, which is really great. It's nice to have those options, especially if you like to customize your bows. And it also continues on with the bridge lock technology. That is both for your stabilizers and your sight up front here. And when you buy the bow, if I could find the piece, you get your bridge lock technology, little lock and nut here, and that just locks whatever bridge lock system you're putting into place. Last but not least, if you notice, compared to the lift of last year, there's a lot more cut out on this riser this year compared to last year's model. It seems like a lot of bow companies have started to move in the direction of trying to lighten their bows. And after talking with Russ, the owner of the shop here, he told me that they went through a lot of different prototypes, cutting out and testing and cutting out and testing, trying to figure out exactly where to make cutouts and how much they could get away with while still keeping that riser safe, functional, and stiff. So all of these cutouts are helping with that weight, and that's how we get to that 3.99 pound weight limit. We still have the center guard cable containment system here. That hasn't changed. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to start to measure these different specs, and we're going to see how close these specs are to what the factory lists out there. Okay, let's go ahead and take some measurements here. We're going to start with the brace height, which is the measure of the measure from the deepest part of the grip to the string at rest. Let's do it. So Mathews says that the brace height for this bow is 6 inches even. And 2 It is a little short of 6 inches here. When this bow is set to 27.5 inches, we are at about 5 7/8. So that is a little bit short, but that's okay. It's pretty close, 5 7/8. It's only an eighth off. That's not the end of the world. Next, let's measure the axle to axle. I know technically speaking, you're supposed to do it from the middle of the axle to the middle of the axle. To make it easier for me, I like to actually go from the inside to the outside, same measurement, assuming that the bolts or the screws are the same diameter. So let's see. This would be easier with a stiffer thing. This is measuring at 29. Wow. This is measuring at 29.5. So this is spot on. Mathews claims it is 29.5. This is measuring at 29.5 inches. That is perfect. That is spot on. Great job, Mathews. Next is the weight. Okay, so I got my hands on the scale now. So let's go ahead and measure the weight of the bow itself. So just so we know, we already have a whisker biscuit installed on here, so it is going to be slightly heavier than advertised, most likely. The bow is advertised at 3.99 pounds. We said let's call it 4. So I'm going to say it should be somewhere with, between 4 and 4.25. So let's see. And it is measuring at 4.28 pounds. I don't know if you guys can see that from there. I will have to zoom in on this, but it is measuring at 4.28 pounds. So it's right inside there where we said it should be. Again, I don't know exactly how heavy this whisker biscuit is, but that's close enough to the advertised for me to be content. Now, before we move on any farther, I do want to point out that a lot of the reviews out there give these bow tests like a score. Each of these things out of 10, then they add it up and give a final score. To be honest with you, I'm not going to do anything like that, simply because it makes it, we all have individual bias, right? We all have bows that we prefer. To be completely honest with you, I, at the moment, am more of a Hoyt guy. I have a Hoyt, I've shot Hoyt, I shoot Darton right now. Love both of those bows, but I feel without a true non-biased way of scoring, it's really difficult to do that, because I end up giving the score that I think, and what I give a score may be different than a score somebody else would give. So my goal in these reviews moving forward is to try to give you the information, try to give you the measurements and the specs, and allow you to make the decision based upon all of that. So we've taken the weight, we've gone over the factory specs. Next, we're going to go over to the draw board, and we're going to start measuring some of the stuff at draw length. So we're going to measure the bow itself is set to, I believe it has a 27.5 inch mods in. We're going to see how it measures on the draw board, and then we're going to go and do some of the other stuff that we have here as well. So let's get to it. So I only have one camera rolling here, but basically what we just did is we just went through making the draw curve. So I'm not going to have it on the screen just yet. Well, I'll put it on the screen when I actually make the video. But what we did was we put this on the draw board. It's attached to a scale, and basically every inch of draw we wrote down the weight that you were holding at that point, and we're going to put that into a program, and it's going to give us a graph. But just to give you guys a little bit of an idea of what we're looking at here, make sure I got it in frame. There we go. So when we look at this, when we first start drawing, we're at about 10.8 pounds. And when we get to about 6 inches of pull, that's where we hit our max. We're at about 70.2 pounds. And for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 inches of the draw cycle, we're pulling that full 70 pounds. So that's probably where the little bit of the gradual stiffness of the draw comes from. But at the same rate, that's also where that speed comes from, because that draw cycle is holding its peak weight for a longer period of time. So remember, when we're talking about bows or we're talking about a draw cycle, there's always going to be a trade-off. If your bow is smoother to draw, it's probably going to be a little bit slower. And if your bow is fast, then it's going to be a little bit stiffer to draw. In my experience shooting this bow, it is not ridiculously stiff. It is not an unfun bow to shoot, but it is a little bit stiffer than some other bows that I have shot. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to crank this bow back up to full draw, and we are going to measure the draw length. Well, I don't need to measure it. I could just tell you. We have the 27.5 inch mods in here, and when I just had this at full draw, it measured exactly 27.5 inches. So Mathews draw lengths and their mod specs are spot on. When you put that 27.5 inch mod into the bow, it is going to be drawn at 27.5 inches. So we're going to go ahead and bring this back to full draw. And now I'm going to go ahead and measure the axle to axle at full draw. Now remember, when we measured the axle to axle a little while ago at brace, the axle to axle at brace was spot on at 29.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and measure the brace now that we are at full draw. And we were looking at 3/16, 26 and 3/16 is our axle to axle at full draw. So whatever you guys want to do with that information, you do that. Go ahead and write that down. Axle to axle at draw, we said 26 and 3/16. That is fantastic. The other thing that I want to do, I can't do it right now. I'll do it when I get home, and then I'll make sure I put the measurement right above here somewhere in the video. But I do want to get you the string angle at full draw as well. So I'll be able to take this from the video and figure that out once we get, once I get home and I do this in post editing. And then, like I said, we'll also have that draw curve up on the screen as well. So at this point, I've gotten all the specs that I want to. We've talked about the technology that the bow has and all that great stuff. So now we're going to go and switch gears. We're going to go over into the shooting room of the bow shop here, and we're going to shoot the bow and talk about how it feels and do some speed tests and get into what you guys are really here to watch. So let's do it. All right, guys. So we're here at the shooting area of the bow shop here. And I'm going to go ahead and start shooting the bow, and we're going to talk about some of the things in here. Now, obviously, we're going to talk about the draw cycle smoothness. Everyone wants to know how smooth a bow draws. Everyone wants to know how smoothly a bow draws. But what not a lot of people talk about in the reviews, quite frankly, I'm not sure that I ever heard anybody talk about it, is how easily a bow lets down. So A, how easy is it to start the letdown? And B, how easy is it to control the letdown all the way through? To put in perspective, my Hoyt Ventum and my Darton Sequel, both of those bows I can draw, begin to let down, and stop the letdown at any point in that letdown and be under full control. Now, if you're just at the shooting range and you're just, having some fun and flinging some arrows, I mean, at the end of the day, that doesn't really make a difference, right? Because you draw the bow, you're going to shoot it. But what happens if you're in a competition and you draw the bow and you just don't like the feel of that draw or that shot, and you want to let that shot down? What about if you're out in the woods and you're out hunting and you draw down on an animal and they go behind a tree and you don't want to sit there and hold it forever? Or let's say you draw the bow and you decide to just not take the shot for some reason. It's really important to not have that herky-jerky motion, where that bow just rips your arm forward, and to keep that under control. This past year, that actually worked in my benefit because I drew on a doe and she ended up not giving me a shot. And she was looking somewhat in my direction. I had to let that bow down, and I was able to do it under control, but then she looked at me while I was letting down. And I was able to stop that letdown and hold about halfway down until she lost interest and went on with her day. So just a quick example of how that, how that letdown is really important. So I'm just going to go ahead and just take a couple shots real quick, and then we could talk about the feel of the bow. Now, I'll be honest, this is just slightly long for me. This is 27.5. I probably should be at 27 inches. That's all right, though. For this review, it's not a problem at all. So I'm just going to take a couple shots, get a feel for the bow, and then I'm going to talk to you about how that feels. And then we're going to go into our speed test, which is what everybody is here for. So at first thoughts, the draw cycle is slightly stiff. Again, it's not anything that should deter anyone from trying this bow out. Obviously go ahead and draw it, test them out at your local shop, see what it feels like for yourself. But it is slightly stiff about there. The back wall, I mean, once you get to full draw, this back wall, it doesn't want to move whatsoever, not one bit. I should also note that these are 85% let-off mods. The back wall is great, and the shot break is clean. That bow wants to go. The arrow wants to release. So it makes that shot break very, very, very clean. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been shooting quite a few different bows because I'm looking for the next bow that I'm going to shoot for 2025-26 season. After shooting some of the newer Mathews, some of the newer Hoyts, and then going back to my Darton, what I actually realized and found out was that Darton actually did not want to break as easily. Not that it's not a fun bow to shoot. I absolutely love my Darton, but the shot break wasn't quite as clean as, say, these new Mathews or these new Hoyts. It just wants to go. So, again, like I said earlier, this grip isn't quite my cup of tea as far as that engage grip. I think that contour grip would be a little bit more my speed, but that's okay. Like I said, the draw cycle, it takes a little bit to get going, and then it takes a little bit to finish it off. So it's stiff in the beginning, stiff at the end. It's stiff in the beginning, it's stiff in the end, and throughout the middle, there's just a consistent draw. You don't feel any increase or decrease in the middle of that draw cycle. And like I showed you earlier when we were taking the specs or the information for that draw curve cycle, it stays at its peak weight for about 7 or 8 inches worth of the draw cycle. So once you hit that peak, it's just smooth all the way back until you get into that last little bit of, I don't even want to call it a hump. It does just get a little stiff towards the end. So now on camera, I'm going to test out this letdown and see how controlled we can make it. Full draw. I want to let down. It wants to go, and once it starts going, oh, you can control it. It's not the worst thing in the world to control. It's also not the easiest that I've shot and tried to control. So keep that in mind. It's definitely not not doable. It certainly is doable, but just something to keep in mind here. So we've discussed the smoothness. We've discussed the letdown begin and the letdown control. We talked about the back wall. Now the vibration in this bow is basically non-existent. I do not feel any vibration. That sound that you guys are hearing as I'm shooting, there's a weight that's in my arrows, and that weight is there to match the weight of my light and knock, so that way my arrows all fly the same no matter what. For me personally, that's really important. Some of you guys might think that's a little overboard, but that's completely okay. So when we talk about the vibration in the hand, there's a little bit on that shot release. When that shot breaks, it's just a little, and it's gone. I don't really find that it affects me on the shot. For some of you, that may be important, but overall, the vibration is more than fine. The sound of this bow, now again, that rattle you hear is my arrow. Don't worry about that. But Russ here has one of the Lift X, I believe he has the Lift X SD, the short draw version, or the RS. I think Mathews' version is the RS. But shooting next to him, that bow is almost completely silent. The noise is almost non-existent, so that's great. The balance of the bow, let's see. So if I want to hold the bow out, left to right, that bow just naturally wants to balance. It's not really going anywhere as far as, you know, left to right from the top. So when I want to hold this bow straight, it wants to hold itself straight. Now again, this is at brace. And then from the side, let me get a little farther here so you can see it. From the side, if I take my finger off the front, this bow slightly wants to lean forward, which a lot of people like. So I don't see anything wrong with that. Overall, the bow balances nicely. And let's see what that balance again at draw. No stabilizers on this bow, nothing. And it really does seem like it just wants to hold perfectly level. I mean, I'm going to purposely move the bow and see how quickly it wants to steady. Not bad at all. The bow definitely wants to settle down quickly. So balance both at brace and at full draw is very, very, very nice. Once again, Mathews has done a phenomenal job with his bow. So I love that. What that balance, if you guys saw what I was doing there, I was purposely torquing the bow from the top and allowing it to kind of come back. That's kind of my way of simulating how the bow is going to react when there's wind. That bow, it wanted, it wiggled a little bit and then it just locked right up. So I really, really, really love that. And I think that's going to transfer very well out on the range to holding on the target. I absolutely love that. Last but not least, let's run the speed test. So I have 3 different arrows here. I have 2 of my own OG sticks. These are the wing and tail version, the wing and tail arrows here. And we have a Maxima arrow. So let's start with the Maxima. So the Maxima arrow measured in at 390 grains. The silver tipped arrow, the arrow with the silver field tip, that one measured at 445 grains. And lastly, this arrow with the long head on it measured at 523 grains. So I'm really, really excited to test these out. I think it's a nice range of arrows that many of us will use for hunting. The 390 is more the speed arrow. That 450-ish arrow, that 445 is like that middle of the road heavier arrow. And then that 523 is what a lot of us would consider a heavier arrow, something there for everyone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 3 shots with each arrow, take the average, and then we can get a good idea of how this, what speeds you can get out of this bow at a shorter draw length. Okay, so first up, we have this Maxima at 390. .315.1, 315.6, 317.4. Next up, we have our silver tipped arrow at 445 grains. 299.1. This bow is just fast. 298.2. 301.2. 298, 299, 301. Let's call that 299, 300-ish. Either way, blazing fast for a 445 grain arrow. That's insane. Last but not least, we are going to run the OG stick at 523 grains. For the record, guys, if you like the OG sticks, if you like the way they look, or if you're interested in them, we do offer them for sale, custom built to your specific bow, to your specific specs. If you're interested, head on over to wingandtailoutdoors.com. Shoot me an email. Let's get you guys a set of arrows. But without further ado, let's shoot 523 grains. So when we went from 390 to 445, that was a 55 grain increase, and we went down about 15 feet per second. I'm going to guess this is going to go down about 20. I'm going to guess that we're going to hit about 280. Let's see how close to that we can get. First shot, 523. 278.2. What did I say, 280? It's pretty darn close. Second shot, 523. 277.5, 278.0. So we're going to say 278 feet per second as the average. Guys, this bow is absolutely lightning fast. Even with a super heavy arrow, it's still hitting speeds that a lot of guys, to be honest with you, aim for in their hunting setup. So if you're a heavy guy, but you still want the speed, this bow is going to get you both. 523 grains, 278 feet per second, 445 grains, 300 feet per second, and 390 grains at 316 feet per second. This bow is an absolute animal. So we're done with the shooting portion of the video. So we're going to head on back over to the counter and kind of give our summary and go over, just give you guys kind of like the bullet points of what we went over today, and we'll close out the video. All right, guys, so that's going to wrap up our test of the Mathews Lift X 29.5. Overall, I'm very impressed with the Mathews bow. I'm pretty sure I said this earlier in the video, and I've said this to pretty much everyone I've encountered today and over the last couple of weeks. I have been poo-pooing on Mathews bows for quite some time now, and I have been pleasantly surprised and proven wrong, to be completely honest with you. I will eat crow when I need to. This bow is fantastic. The draw cycle, like I said, it is a little bit stiff after shooting it for a while. You do feel it, but that's something that you're going to get used to the longer you shoot this bow. More importantly for me is the letdown. It wasn't an awful letdown on this bow, but it was a little bit stiffer of a letdown than I personally like. Is that something that should stop you from testing this bow out or buying it yourself? Absolutely not. This is a phenomenal bow. You have fantastic tuning options. The weight of this bow is super light. It's easy as heck to carry around all day long. The shot break is smooth. The back wall is solid as can be. When you go to let the bow down, it wants to come down. So as soon as you let off a little bit, it's going to drop, which is also going to keep you honest. Keep in mind, we shot this bow at 85% let off. If you dropped it down to 80, if you put the 80% let off mods into this bow, I would venture to guess that the letdown would become even more responsive and would go down even easier than it did now. I would also venture to guess that it would have a little bit more speed added to it through the chronograph. As far as speed is concerned, since we're on that topic, this thing is an absolute speed demon. To recap here, at 390 grains, this bow was shooting at an average of 316 feet per second. 445 grains, 300 feet per second, and 525 grains, 278 feet per second. All respectable numbers, all respectable weights, all realistic weights that you may be taking out into the field with you. And overall, this bow just shot absolutely incredible. It held nice on the target. It wanted to keep its balance. It had a little bit of a forward lean to it, which anyone who's used stabilizers knows that sometimes you want to aim for that anyway. So this bow naturally wants to lean forward. So when you put your rest on it and you put a front stabilizer on it, that's only going to exacerbate that motion. As for the specs, for the most part, it was spot on. 29.5 inch advertised, or 29.5 inch advertised axle to axle, 29.5 measured. 6 inch brace height advertised, 5 7/8 inch measured. The weight was 399 advertised, 429 or 4.29 pounds with the whisker biscuit on measured. So I would venture to guess if we took that whisker biscuit off, it would be right at that 3.99. Overall, again, this is a great bow. While I have you guys, if you live in the Milford area, Milford, Pennsylvania area, anywhere where New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania come together, you got to come and check out Silver Birch Archery. Russ, the owner, is absolutely incredible. I want to thank him so much for allowing me to use his space and allowing me to use his bows to do these tests. Again, today we did the Mathews. I think next week we are going to go ahead and test the Hoyt RX9 and compare the two, because I've shot them both. They both feel great. They both have some speed to them. And I'm really interested to see how one stacks up against the other. So I want to thank you guys so much for joining us here today for the very, very first bow review on Wing and Tail Outdoors. Remember, success is just a commitment away, and we'll see you next week right here, same place, same time. Have a good one, guys.